Quebec recently presented Bill 96, which, if it's adopted, will make really important changes to the province's language laws with far-reaching consequences for English-speaking, minority, and French-speaking communities throughout the province of Quebec. So, needless to say, we need to talk about this. Hi again, my name is Humphrey and welcome to About Townshippers. This is a web series where we talk about the organizations, the services, and the topics that are important to English speakers living throughout Quebec's beautiful eastern townships. To learn more about Quebec's Bill 96, I recently sat down with Gerald Cutting, who is president of Townshippers Association, and he gave us a great overview of the important points, or should I say the important consequences of this infamous bill. Now, among other things, we talked about how this bill will allow Quebec to unilaterally modify our Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms. We talked about how the bill will affect our bilingual municipalities. And we also talked about the creation of a ministry for the French language, that ministry's power and its reach. But there's so much to share with you in that first episode that we've created a second episode. So here in part 2, Gerald elaborates a bit more on some of those points we talked about in the first chat, and we'll also be looking at how the bill will be affecting business owners and their customers, how it'll affect the education system and both English and French speaking students, and also how it will affect our access to legal recourse. And we also touch on several other kind of worrisome points.
We're, I think, very fortunate here in the townships that in general, we have access and there is a lot of goodwill practice. You talk to people in some other regions and what you will hear is a different story. And we also have to understand that to maintain a community, you have to have your institutions, English institutions. Once they are gone, there were only English speakers. And one of the concerns that I had is that also look at, you're operating a small business, 20 to 50 employees. You will now have to become subject to what was originally in Bill 101, and with 96, a 101 plus. And there may be a number of businesses that are struggling right now with the pandemic, just barely getting by, and to then add another layer of bureaucracy. And I would say that what we also have to look at, how many people who are French-speaking people are denied the right to work in French, especially in the regions.
How many, can you repeat that, Jerry?
How many French speakers? See, this law in part is
are denied to work in English.
Who are forced to work in English and have a right to work in French. And I think it all comes down to, well, if you happen to be selling, as an example, supposing you're selling 90% of everything you produce to in the American market. And you need to have people who can deal with the customers. Well, that is an issue there, but you can designate that certain jobs must be bilingual. What I would advance as a concern, though, if you look at how things are often manipulated, the right to work in French can soon become the obligation to work in French. And then what you have is English speakers. And we must remember that this bill would be extended to all federally regulated organizations. That means the post office. Walk into a post office, what's one of the first things you see?
Bilingual service. Yeah.
So what happens then if there is a move to say, well, you can't require anyone to serve the customers in English. It will be against the law. So if I'm employed and I don't want to serve you in English, I won't have to. Under the federal system, it's the customer that decides, not the employee. Good business is always one where customers come first. this in and of itself is going to set, how is the federal government going to react to this one? Is it going to roll over like it did with Bill 121? We just don't know. And as a customer, you will not have the right to a legal recourse because it's been taken away.
A notwithstanding clause.
Yeah. This is why I try and link so many things up with the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, because it is fundamental to being able to pass this bill. If this bill wasn't targeting the English population, you would not need the notwithstanding clause.
Well, of course it would. It's like saying, let's sit down and have a discussion, but your opinion will not, I'm not going to listen to your opinion. I'm not going to respect your rights. It's just, so what's the use? I mean, it's blatant. It's in your face. What do you say to that?
I think we have a really tough issue because the vast majority of the French population readily accepts this bill. And if we don't have allies in the French community, take the example of access to English colleges. Who does this hit the hardest? If I have a son or daughter that's graduating from high school and they want to go to an English college, Champlain, Lennoxville, for example, and the enrollment is going to be capped. So, and it's being capped on the basis that there are English students who don't get in because French students who often come from private schools have outstanding marks and get into the programs, and that the English students don't. Where's the data? Are there hundreds of students that have been turned away? Or is it the occasional student who didn't get into a program that's very difficult to get into because even if they are English, they don't have the marks to get into? I think this is a trap too, because on the surface, it looks like we're going to champion the English institutions for the English community. But by limiting the French enrollment, you cut off people. Again, there could be French parents or French students who would have access then to the Bill of Rights and say, how come I've been denied entry into an English college on the basis that I'm French? Talk about some discrimination.
Oh, it's, well, it's huge. I mentioned domino effect a bit earlier, and you can just see it's all, and you describe it very well. It's all linked together. There's so many repercussions.
Well, let me just give you another possible repercussions for the English colleges. The enrollment comes down, and as a result of that, the ability to maintain certain programs becomes more difficult. So the programs are certain caps, the programs are phased out. After a while, the college ends up being one where the programs become so limited that English students are going to have to go either to Montreal or out of the province to get the kind of training and education they want. So I see this as one where on the surface, we're told we're championing you. In reality, it's another way in which of limiting the French population's access to the kind of education that would permit a young person to have a tool in their employment toolbox that's very, very valuable, bilingualism.
Well, Jerry, I mean, I appreciate the way you bring out these different aspects of this bill that we may not think about right offhand, but we don't really have to dig very far to see, the negative effects of what's being proposed here. And what's unfortunate is that we kind of run out of time. We could talk about this for about 4 days, probably. Now, this concerns a lot of people. Obviously, it concerns English speakers right throughout the province, all minorities, and even French speakers, as you mentioned, who want to attend English schools. So now, is it too late for people to voice their opinion? Just to close things out here, what would you suggest for people that are really, concerned about this?
Well, what I suggest as we take up Mr. Legault's invitation, he said we are going to allow sufficient time to make sure that this is well discussed and well debated. Show up, have positions that are based on facts. In other words, ask some of the tough questions. Show me the data that there's large numbers of English students that can't get into English colleges. Show me that French is actually in decline, because a lot of this is based on the fact that the number of people who say they are using French at home has declined very slightly for two reasons. One, we have an aging population. And unfortunately, we're losing, whether they be French speaking or English speaking, we're losing members of our community every year because we're aging. And the other factor is that in the French communities, people are no longer having families of 8, 14 children.
Good point. Very good point.
The birth rate is way, way down. It's one of the lowest in the G8. You put those two factors together, yes, indeed, there are fewer French speakers. But for anyone who is in Quebec right now, I challenge you to tell me that this is not a vibrant, dynamic, entrepreneurial society, that the French majority is in fact one that is fully in control of this province. And that I don't buy for a moment the idea that somehow the French language and culture is going to disappear if we don't take measures. And the measures, unfortunately, end up being ones where, again, we're going to be looking at signage and becoming even more repressive.
That's a
so
whole
the measures to promote French are probably not going to do it anyway. What we're really dealing with here are issues that are around identity. And while Mr. Legault was talking about the French identity, what he doesn't realize is that we are profoundly attached to our identity as English Canadians who are also Québécois. And that by stepping on our identity, he has done something that he himself says he wants to do with the French community, that is to protect, help to nourish, help us to become more vibrant, and to be able not just to survive, but to thrive. That's what we want to do. And we are willing to do it in a bilingual context. And I take this bill as rather a profound setback to what I thought was a very progressive move on the part of the English community as a whole, to become more bilingual, to become more integrated into the social and political life of the province. And this is going to set us, I think, one against the other, because identity, while it can bring out the best in us, can bring out the worst in us.
Well, Jerry, we're going to finish on that note there, which is kind of a very delicate and kind of a negative note, but the positive thing is that we still do have a certain period where we can express ourselves, whether it's through local media, whether it's through writing letters, going to town halls, writing to our local MPs, and doing all that. I'd like to thank you very much for taking time to speak with us today. Gerald Cutting, you are president of Townshippers Association, and well, you've been pretty generous. And like I said, we could talk about this for a couple more hours. So we'll have to do a take two at some point.
I'd be delighted to do that. And just remember, anyone that's watching this, we can take charge of our own destiny.
Well, this has been part 2 of our chat with Gerald Cutting, who is a president of Townshippers Association. And we talked about Bill 96 and its proposed changes to Quebec's language laws. Now, if you would like to voice your concern, and we hope you do, voice your concern about this bill, time is really of the essence. So take a look in the video description. You'll find several ways that you can voice those concerns, but you have to act quickly. And please share the information as much as possible with both your English and your French-speaking family, your friends, your colleagues, your neighbors, people you see in the street. We really have to talk about this. Now, if you found this video useful, please share and like it, because it really helps us spread these important stories and this news throughout the English-speaking communities of the townships. And don't forget, you can also subscribe to Townshippers Association's YouTube channel. And well, thanks a lot for being with us today. My name is Ed Humphrey. This is About Townshippers, and we'll see you next time.